For the past 2 decades, the Chinese Communist Party has overseen the killing of prisoners of conscience for their organs. The main victims are practitioners of the spiritual discipline Falun Gong and China's Uyghur population. Some have called this large-scale transplant abuse genocide. In an interview by NTD in the Epoch Times, one of the foremost experts on this topic, David Mטאs, gives us an update on his work.
In China, surgeons have become executioners. 2 recent studies provide new evidence on the Chinese Communist Party's illegal organ trade. They identified Chinese medical papers showing that physicians had carved out organs from people for transplant without first conducting a test to establish brain death, which is an international standard procedure. International human rights lawyer David Mטאs has been writing and researching on forced organ harvesting in China since 2006.
2 studies, first of all, they provide another evidentiary trail which confirms what we already found, that people are being killed through organ extraction and not because the organs aren't being extracted because they're brain dead.
The most recent study showed that a significant proportion of organs used for transplant in China continues to be obtained illegally outside of the official registry system, even after 2015. That's the year when Chinese officials claimed to have stopped using organs from prisoners. The topic of transplant abuse in China appears to be, even in the medical community, not well known. How does Mטאs explain that?
When we did our first press conference on this in 2006, I said it's a new form of evil on the planet. And people are used to hearing about other forms of mass killing, and so it's easier to believe a repetition of something that's happened in the past. I mean, one of the questions I would ask people who say, convince me quickly, I would say to them, what would we know about the Holocaust today if the Nazis, the Axis powers instead of the Allied powers had won World War II? Probably very little. And that's the situation. I mean, obviously China doesn't control the whole world, but it controls the sources, the information, and it's not transparent. But if you're at all skeptical, just read the evidence.
One of Mטאs's messages in his decades of work on behalf of human rights has been that we ignore human rights violations, including those far away at our own peril. Violations tend to spread, and when we become the victims, it's already too late. He says forced organ harvesting in China illustrates this, as it's being used to target different groups, including the spiritual group Falun Gong, as well as the Uyghurs, and the scale of its use has grown.
But there's also places like through the Belt and Road initiative where this Chinese culture of organ transplant abuse is spreading, and we're seeing it in places in Thailand and Cambodia now.
The UK Parliament in March banned organ tourism. An amendment to the new Health and Care Bill criminalises any UK resident who travels abroad to purchase an organ, including to China. Mטאs says that's not enough. He says the UK needs to set up a compulsory reporting system to make the law effective, or we won't know how many UK citizens go to China for organs.
The problem of actually getting the data. I mean, it's very nice to say we're going to prosecute people who are involved in transplant abuse abroad, but how do you know? There's no controls. If you're a UK person and you want to leave the UK, you don't have to report to anybody about where you're going or why you're going. And when you come back, if you're a UK citizen, they just let you in. So how are they going to even know that you went to China for a transplant unless they set up a system of reporting?
He says it's not just organ tourists who are complicit in this crime against humanity.
There's a lot of Western countries where there's transplant tourists going into China, where there's cooperation between Chinese transplant institutions and Western transplant institutions, where there's training of Chinese transplant professionals in the West, where there's exportation of pharmaceuticals, anti-rejection drugs from the West into China.
Mטאs says the UK and other Western countries can and need to do a lot more to confront the problem. Eddie Aitken, NTD News.